At exactly 2 o'clock Zulu, an enemy commander staring at his sonar screen smiled. He had successfully snuck his stealth submarine into the blind spot of a crippled American warship. He thought he was the apex predator preparing for the kill. He was wrong. He didn't know that for the last 12 nautical miles, an American nuclear attack submarine had been tracking his every breath, and an invisible swarm of drones was already descending from the sky. Today, we're going to look at how the United States military orchestrates a digital death trap, and why the most terrifying weapon in the American arsenal doesn't even make an explosion. By analyzing recent naval engagements, electronic warfare doctrines, and the sheer computational power of systems like the Aegis network, we can reconstruct exactly what happens when adversaries test the maritime order. We aren't just looking at firepower. We are looking at the math, physics, and cyber tactics of modern obliteration. For weeks, United States intelligence had been tracking a shadow fleet of Iranian vessels smuggling advanced guidance systems. A direct interception was politically impossible, as any overt strike would trigger a massive escalation. The Pentagon needed a solution that was entirely invisible. The USS Laboon was not just patrolling the waters. It was the bait in a complex anti-access and area denial reversal. By feigning a catastrophic engineering casualty, billowing black smoke, and shutting down its primary radars, the United States Navy deliberately created a 10 nautical mile blind spot in the blockade. Emboldened by this apparent gap in the American line, the target emerged. It was an Iranian Savaiz-class cargo ship executing erratic zigzag pattern evasive maneuvers through the dense fog. But the true confidence of the Iranian forces lay beneath the waves. Escorting the cargo vessel was an Iranian Project 877-kilo class submarine, a diesel-electric vessel known as the Black Hole of the Ocean. The submarine was hiding deep within the thermocline layer, a sharp temperature gradient that bends sonar waves and renders conventional detection useless. The Iranian crew felt completely secure, creeping at a silent 4 knots deep within the Mediterranean. They believed they had found the perfect loophole to smuggle a deadly weapon through the American blockade. They were relying on outdated tactics and the thermocline layer to hide, driven by a geopolitical arrogance that blinded them to the reality of the battle space. They were completely unaware that stealth beneath the waves is an unforgiving calculation of physics. As the Iranian cargo ship surged blindly through the artificial gap, the true operation commenced. The fog was not just hiding the Iranian ship, it was hiding the American predators. A team of Navy SEALs, riding low in the freezing chop on a stealth rigid inflatable boat, matched the vessel's speed perfectly. They did not need to board the ship because their payload was airborne. A sudden variable threatened to blow the entire mission when a lone Iranian guard on the cargo ship's deck heard an unnatural high-pitched whine cutting through the sound of the diesel engines. It was an incoming swarm of micro-unmanned aerial vehicles. Clicking off his safety, the guard raised his rifle and aimed his flashlight into the swirling mist directly toward the American operators. The United States forces had a clear, lethal shot, but pulling a trigger meant igniting a geopolitical firestorm. Instead of firing a bullet, the Americans deployed a specialized acoustic decoy. A loud, violent, metallic crash erupted from the complete opposite end of the Iranian ship. The guard flinched immediately, lowering his rifle and sprinting aft to investigate the noise. In that golden 30-second window, the micro-drones completed their approach. They slammed into the steel walls of the high-value containers, gripping tight with permanent magnets, and instantly powered down into absolute silence. When the guard returned to his post and found nothing but sea spray, he assumed it was merely unsecured cargo shifting in the waves. While the cargo ship sailed blindly above with its new invisible passengers, the real threat lurked below. To maintain a stable depth within the shifting underwater currents, the Russian-built submarine was forced to make a microscopic adjustment. The captain ordered a slight routine actuation of the trim tank pumps, which produced a faint hydraulic squeak. It was a sound lasting mere milliseconds, generating barely 30 decibels of acoustic energy before being swallowed by the ambient noise of the sea. To any conventional hull-mounted sensor, it was absolutely nothing. But trailing 12 nautical miles behind the Kilo submarine, moving in an ultra-quiet 5 knots, was the USS Virginia Block IV nuclear attack submarine. It had just deployed its towed array sonar, a massive, ultra-sensitive acoustic antenna stretching thousands of feet into the ocean depths, far away from its own propeller noise. The Virginia's onboard processing system instantly isolated that specific mechanical signature from the background clutter. The Kilo submarine's acoustic cloaking failed instantly. The black hole was brilliantly illuminated on the Virginia's tactical displays. The American hunter now knew the precise depth, heading, and speed of its prey. The Iranian submarine was firmly locked, completely unaware that the crosshairs were already on its hull. At 0227 Zulu, the USS Virginia had a perfect firing solution on the Kilo. The commanding officer stared at the targeting display, holding the power to launch an advanced capability torpedo. But a kinetic kill would trigger a multinational war within minutes. United States defense networks process threats in milliseconds, reducing enemy attacks to solve geometric equations faster than human reflexes. Instead of a warhead, the Virginia launched a self-propelled decoy from its signal ejector. The decoy rocketed forward, executing a programmed maneuver designed to mimic a multi-ship anti-submarine warfare task, force charging at flank speed. Aboard the Kilo, the Iranian sonar screens erupted. The once silent ocean was suddenly filled with the deafening roar of simulated destroyer propellers and aggressive active pinging. To the Iranian captain, his worst nightmare had materialized. He believed he was being boxed in by multiple surface combatants, his prized submarine trapped within the confines of the thermocline. Terrified of being crushed in a coordinated depth charge attack, the Kilo captain abandoned the escort mission. He ordered a crash dive, plunging his submarine into the deep cold water and turning its tail towards safety. The black hole fled, leaving the Iranian cargo ship completely abandoned and defenseless against the storm that was about to hit from above. This is the cold, hard reality of miscalculating against an integrated battle network. The adversaries believe they are conducting surprise attacks, completely unaware that United States surveillance systems and sonars have been tracking them since they powered on their engines. The American silence during these operations is a chilling irony, allowing the enemy to think they're closing in on victory when they are in fact merely closing in on their own funeral date. The sheer computational power of the American arsenal transforms these encounters into a masterclass in pragmatism. When an adversary challenges the United States Navy, they are not facing a standard military standoff. They're stepping into a digital slaughterhouse where the outcome is decided long before they even realize they are in danger. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps often relies on a catastrophic strategic hallucination, painting a portrait of a declining America while utilizing obsolete hardware. They fail to grasp that a superpower's restraint is not weakness, but a highly calculated choice. The United States military waits until the laws of physics and the rules of engagement allow them to precisely manipulate the battle space. In this era of modern warfare, the space between posturing and annihilation is measured in milliseconds. High-end American military technology has compressed the operational theater, turning complex provocations into simple physics problems. As the cargo ship continued its solitary journey, it was entirely blind to the overarching strategy of the United States forces. The Americans were executing a brilliant gray zone warfare tactic, focusing on electronic and cyber warfare rather than kinetic destruction. The true measure of absolute power in the 21st century is not defined by who fires the biggest missile. It is defined by who can manipulate GPS coordinates to steer enemies into traps, hijack radar screens, and use acoustic decoys to create a level of psychological terror that physical explosions simply cannot match. The United States uses these non-kinetic kills to blind the enemy, plant micro-trackers, and let the adversary live just long enough to unwittingly transport those trackers deep into their own highly classified subterranean bunkers. The operation unfolding in the fog was not a battle of firepower, but a high-stakes game of algorithmic awakening, where the agonizing manual labor of the enemy stood no chance against the millisecond processing power of American computers. The failure of the subterranean smuggling operation was only the beginning of a broader strategic collapse for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. When stealth and gray zone tactics fail against the American digital net, Iranian commanders frequently default to desperate kinetic force. On a routine morning in western Iraq, 600 United States Marines were stationed at the Al-Assad Air Base, conducting standard training operations with coalition forces. At 9:45 a.m., the alarm suddenly screamed across the facility as 88 solid-fueled feigned ballistic missiles were detected inbound from Iranian territory. The Iranian military planners had launched everything they had in a synchronized 3-minute window, intending to overwhelm American air defenses and inflict massive casualties that would force a United States withdrawal from the region. They believed that sheer quantity would overcome technological superiority. They made several catastrophic miscalculations. Long before the missiles reached their apogee, United States Space Force satellites detected the infrared signatures of the launches instantly. The illusion of a surprise attack was shattered in milliseconds as computers calculated the trajectories and transmitted a 12-minute early warning alert to Central Command. Sirens wailed across the base, and all 600 Marines executed a disciplined, panic-free evacuation into hardened concrete subterranean bunkers. Above ground, the true power of the American defense architecture awakened. Al-Assad was protected by 4 Patriot missile batteries in the Advanced Pack 3 configuration, boasting 16 launchers and 64 interceptors ready to engage. As the Iranian ballistic missiles began their terminal descent from 40 kilometers high, accelerating to Mach 5, the Patriot radar systems tracked every single threat. The engagement was not a frantic defense, but a cold, mathematical execution. At 9:40 a.m., the first Patriot interceptors launched, climbing at supersonic speeds to meet their targets. The sky above the Iraqi desert filled with smoke trails and high-altitude explosions as the Iranian warheads were detonated harmlessly in the upper atmosphere. Every 5 seconds, automated systems reloaded the Patriot launchers with mechanical precision, maintaining a continuous, impenetrable wall of fire. In the final 60 seconds, the lowest and fastest Iranian missiles entered their most difficult terminal phase. But the Patriot system was explicitly designed for last-second kills. 30 seconds before the first Iranian weapon was scheduled to impact the barracks, the final interceptors engaged. All 88 Iranian ballistic missiles were destroyed in the sky. It was a 100% intercept rate, resulting in 0 American casualties and absolutely no damage to the base. The mathematical miracle had held, proving that American military technology transforms complex provocations into simple, perfectly solved physics problems. However, the American doctrine of calculated restraint does not mean an attack goes unanswered. The moment the final intercept was confirmed, the Pentagon authorized Operation Iron Shield. The retaliatory strike was designed to be instantaneous, overwhelmingly precise, and completely disproportionate. From the Persian Gulf, United States Navy destroyers fired 72 Tomahawk cruise missiles, while Air Force F-15E Strike Eagles and Navy F, divided by -18E Super Hornets, launched from regional bases carrying hundreds of 2,000-pound precision-guided bombs. They targeted the specific launch sites, radar installations, and command centers that orchestrated the failed attack. The destruction was absolute. The Tomahawks arrived first, flying low to evade detection and completely obliterating the Iranian Aerospace Force command bunkers and ammunition stored facilities. Minutes later, the strike aircraft released their payload from beyond the range of Iranian air defenses. GPS-guided bombs penetrated the underground shelters of all 11 launch sites, destroying the equipment and triggering massive secondary explosions. In just 33 minutes, 19 Iranian military bases were erased from the map, and over 1,200 enemy personnel were eliminated. The adversaries learned a brutal lesson. Firing at American forces triggers a 30-minute countdown to your own erasure. Despite these devastating losses, the strategic hallucination within Tehran persisted. Needing a symbolic victory to appease domestic audiences and prove they were not a paper tiger, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps orchestrated another suicidal provocation, this time in the aerial domain. At precisely 5 in the morning, under the cover of the dense morning mist over the Persian Gulf, 6 Iranian MiG-29 Fulcrums suddenly tore through the cloud layer. They descended to 3,000 feet with no identification transponders active, pushing their aging Soviet-era engines to combat speed. Their vector was aimed directly at the heart of the American carrier strike group, the nuclear-powered Titan, the USS Abraham Lincoln. The Iranian pilots were fueled by a lethal delusion, believing that a low-altitude approach over the dark waters could allow them to slip through radar gaps and ambush the $12 billion supercarrier. They hoped to create a sudden, terrifying propaganda reel that would force Washington to back down. But they were trying to play hide and seek with an adversary capable of seeing through both night and distance. 90 minutes prior to their takeoff, United States surveillance satellites had beamed every single movement at the Bandar Abbas Air Base directly to the Pentagon. Intelligence analysts watched crystal-clear feeds as every refueling truck moved and every MiG engine roared to life. The arrogance of the Iranian command collided with absolute power before their landing gear had even retracted. As the 6 fighters accelerated toward the Abraham Lincoln, they were not just entering an air defense zone. They were stepping into a digital slaughterhouse. At a distance of 52 nautical miles, the SPY 1D phased array radar on the cruiser USS Gettysburg snagged the contacts. The fate of the 6 Iranian pilots was immediately handed over to algorithms. Within exactly 2.3 seconds, threat data cascaded across the carrier strike group's synchronized network. The Aegis combat system, possessing ruthless beauty and processing at light speed, transformed the 6 enemy jets into solved geometric equations. The computers predicted with surgical precision that the enemy formation would enter effective firing range in exactly 11 minutes and 43 seconds. While 12 minutes might seem like enough time for a morning coffee to a civilian, in the world of the United States Navy, it is an eternity to prepare for a digital massacre. The entire strike group shifted from silent patrol into a total annihilation machine. The American destroyers instantly pivoted their radars, locking onto every single target, while vertical launch systems cells hummed open, ready to spit out interceptor missiles. The disparity was not just about hardware, it was about cognition. The Iranian pilots were sweating in their cramped cockpits, struggling with antiquated mechanical consoles and trying to maintain a complex formation according to last century's doctrines. They believed they were bold aggressors, completely unaware that on the tactical displays inside the Lincoln's Combat Direction Center, they were merely red blips waiting to be deleted. American electronic warfare suites began harvesting every signal emitted by the MiG radars, analyzing frequencies, and wrapping the enemy in a colorless, odorless electromagnetic storm. The American silence during those 12 minutes was a chilling irony. The enemy thought they were closing in on victory, but they were in fact merely closing in on their own funeral date. At exactly 5:51 a.m., the scramble order ripped through the pre-dawn silence of the Lincoln's flight deck. The highly trained crew compressed a standard 4-minute procedure into 90 seconds of absolute controlled chaos. 2F divided by a -18E Super Hornets, call signs Python 1 and Python 2, were spotted on the catapults, their engines screaming at idle, ready to convert thermal energy into pure obliteration. The catapult officer flashed the signal. The pilots slammed the throttles to full afterburner, and 40 tons of steel were violently launched across the deck, accelerating from 0 to 165 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds. The Super Hornets rocketed off the bow, ascending rapidly to 20,000 feet and seizing total positional and visual superiority. The American pilots, exhibiting the chilling composure of professional hunters, began sorting their targets on radar from a distance where the naked eye saw only empty void. The hunt had officially begun, and a high-stakes game of aerial chess commenced where Tehran's arrogance would be utterly dismantled by the cold efficiency of American air combat doctrine. The 6 Iranian MiG-29s split into 2 elements, executing a classic pincer maneuver. One group charged from the northeast at 8,000 feet, while the other approached from the east at 15,000 feet. They hoped this vertical split would saturate the Lincoln's defensive attention. It was a tactical idea that might have worked decades ago, provided they were not facing an integrated battle network designed to track and engage hundreds of targets simultaneously. Imagine the desperation inside those cockpits. One Iranian pilot made a reckless dive to just 400 feet above the waves. His jet washed churning the Persian Gulf as he screamed toward the Lincoln's bow at 480 knots. Another rolled inverted, roaring across the superstructure of the USS Porter, so close that the crew felt the seismic shock of his engines. They were posturing for the cameras, searching for that perfect propaganda shot for the elites in Tehran. But the reality was vastly different. The entire time, their radar warning receivers were screaming a continuous, lethal tone. It was the sound of certain death, the confirmation that they were hard-locked. They were not the aggressors. They were mere prey being herded with chilling composure by the American pilots. The psychological collapse began with that relentless high-pitched alarm. Every time a MiG attempted a maneuver, Python 1 and Python 2 shadowed them like vengeful ghosts, maintaining a perfect firing solution. The Iranian pilots knew that a single trigger pull from the Americans would reduce them to stardust. This immense pressure caused their formation to fracture. What began as a coordinated approach devolved into erratic, disjointed movements. The initial bravado evaporated, replaced by the bone-chilling realization that in this game of chess, America does not just have better pieces, they own the entire board. Those struggling jets were fighting for survival against an opponent who had not even bothered to fully unsheath his sword. All restraint has its limits, and at exactly 6:14 a.m., Tehran officially crossed that red line. A single MiG-29 suddenly broke formation, executing a high-G dive directly toward the island superstructure of the USS Abraham Lincoln. This was no longer a display. It was a kamikaze-style attack trajectory. Instantly, the ship's neural network reacted. Phalanx close-in weapon systems automatically tracked, ready to spit out 4,500 rounds per minute. In the Combat Direction Center, the tactical action officer took exactly 2 seconds to make a decision that would forever alter the opposing pilot's life. Python 1, you are weapons free, engage. The call bruiser crackled over the radio, the code for an irreversible hostile engagement. Python 1 did not miss a millisecond. His fingers squeezed the trigger, and an AIM-120 AMRAAM missile dropped from its rail. The missile accelerated to Mach 4 in a heartbeat, streaking across the morning sky like a bolt of white lightning. For the Iranian pilot, the siren in his cockpit was no longer a warning. It was a funeral dirge. He attempted a hard brake, desperately popping flares, but the AMRAAM is not a predator easily deceived. It is designed to find and destroy with surgical finality. Then came impact. The missile's 20-pound blast fragmentation warhead detonated precisely next to the right engine. A brilliant orange fireball erupted in midair, shredding hydraulic lines, fuel systems, and transforming a mechanical masterpiece into a flaming hunk of scrap metal. In less than a second, Iran's proud fighter became an uncontrollable wreck plummeting toward the ocean. The pilot had only one choice left to save his life. He pulled the ejection handle, and the rocket-powered seat blasted him clear with a force 17 times that of gravity, compressing his spine in an instant before his white parachute blossomed against the Persian Gulf sky. In mere seconds, a symbol of Iranian power evaporated, leaving a bloody message for the remaining 5 jets. When the Lord of the Ocean speaks, the price of admission is total annihilation. The silence that blanketed the Persian Gulf immediately following the explosion was broken only by the frantic roar of the remaining 5 jets fleeing for their lives. There were no more pincer formations, no more performative acrobatics. Their arrogance had evaporated alongside the black smoke of their downed wingmen. Meanwhile, the $12 billion supercarrier continued its planned course unyielding, without a single degree of heading deviation or a single knot of speed adjustment. To the USS Abraham Lincoln, the recent kill was merely a minor footnote in the daily log, a cold reminder that the maritime order cannot be shaken by amateurish provocations. But observe the biting irony in how a superpower conducts itself. Moments after shredding the jet, the Americans transmitted the precise coordinates of the downed pilot to the Iranian side via international rescue channels. It was a stinging slap to the leadership in Tehran. The message was unmistakable. We can annihilate you in an instant, and we are also the only ones decent enough to tell you where to pick up the pieces of your pilot. This doctrine of absolute technological overmatch extends beyond submarine hunts and aerial dogfights. It dictates the reality of surface warfare, where the threats move at hypersonic speeds. There is a fundamental difference between a miss and a warning. A miss is accidental, a failure of guidance, or a deflection by countermeasures. A warning is intentional, a weapon aimed close enough to demonstrate capability, but not close enough to cause damage. On February 28th, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the USS Laboon, was operating in the Gulf of Oman. At 2:38 p.m., the ship's spy, 1D radar detected an airborne contact emerging from the Iranian coast. In under 60 seconds, the contact climbed to 45,000 feet at Mach 4.2. The Aegis system classified the threat in 9 seconds. It was a Fate 313 solid-fueled road-mobile tactical ballistic missile carrying a 450-kilogram high-explosive warhead. The Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense System, the most advanced naval air defense system on Earth, computed the Intercept solution in 4.7 seconds. The predicted impact point was precisely 370 meters from the Laboon, less than 4 football fields away. Commander Jason Tate stared at the display. The impact prediction had a margin of error. The missile could be aiming at the Laboon and miss by 370 meters, or it could be aiming 370 meters away and land exactly where intended. With less than 40 seconds before the missile reached its apogee and began its terminal descent, he had to make a choice. Intercepting a ballistic missile would be an act with massive strategic implications, potentially escalating the conflict into a full-scale war. Commander Tate made the call. Weapons free. Engage with SM-6. An SM-6 Block 1 missile erupted from the forward vertical launch system, climbing at Mach 3.5. But 8 seconds after launch, the Fate 313's trajectory shifted. Its reentry body deployed maneuvering fins, adjusting course by a mere 2 degrees. That microscopic shift moved the predicted impact point further away, to 547 meters. The missile was guiding itself away from the ship, confirming it was a deliberate near miss. 15 seconds before intercept, Commander Tate made a second, agonizing decision. Disengage. The SM-6 received a mid-course update to break lock and self-destruct harmlessly in the sky. The Fate 313 struck the water 547 meters from the port beam. The impact was enormous. The water column rose 80 feet, and the concussive wave transmitted through the water hit the hull with enough force to trigger structural damage alarms, knocking sailors off their feet. It was close enough to kill, but the response was already in motion. The moment the launch was detected, the Aegis system automatically transmitted targeting data to the entire theater. At 2:42 p.m., Commander Tate authorized a retaliatory strike. 4 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from the aft cells. Their targets were the specific infrastructure that enabled the attack. The first Tomahawk obliterated the sophisticated phased array tracking radar near Chabahar. The second penetrated a hardened storage bunker, detonating inside and triggering a massive secondary explosion that destroyed up to the 6 assembled ballistic missiles and their transporter Rector launchers, erasing $40 million of equipment in an instant. The 4th Tomahawk struck the launch junction, eliminating the support convoy. Shortly after, 2B-1B Lancer bombers arrived overhead, dropping 8 2,000-pound penetrating bombs to completely collapse the subterranean command bunker. In under 90 minutes, the entire missile complex was systematically dismantled. This is the cold reality of modern defense technology and geopolitical crisis reconstruction. The adversaries of the United States continuously test the boundaries, hoping to find a weakness in the armor. But they consistently fail to understand that in 21st century gray zone warfare, the winner is not necessarily the one who fires first or the one with the most physical warships. The dominant force is the one capable of algorithmic awakening, the one that can plant destructive pathogens deep within the enemy's core without leaving a single fingerprint. The United States military operates on a level of calculated restraint that looks like hesitation to the untrained eye, but is actually a mathematical countdown to perfect, legal, and absolute obliteration. They do not just blow up ships or shoot down planes. They manipulate GPS coordinates, hijack radar screens, deploy acoustic decoys, and hack secret bunkers to create a level of psychological terror that physical explosions simply cannot match. You can attempt to ambush a carrier, you can fire 88 missiles at a base, and you can drop a ballistic warhead 500 meters from a destroyer. But the moment you pull the trigger, you do not start a war. You simply start a 30-minute countdown to your own erasure. Never gamble your luck against the Lord of the Ocean.